The huge chamber of the Galactic Confederation Council stretched upward in gleaming spirals of alien architecture. Hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy sat in curved rows, their bodies of all shapes and sizes, some with tentacles, others with multiple eyes, many requiring special atmospheric bubbles to breathe. Captain Ju Park stood alone at the speaking platform. Though not tall by human standards, she appeared sturdy and resolute compared to many of the delicate alien species. Her dark uniform bore the patches of Earth's United Defense Force, and her straight posture revealed her military training. Honorable representatives, Ju began, her voice steadied despite her rising anger. I come before you again to report an attack on the human settlement of New Buzan. 43 civilians dead. Infrastructure destroyed. This marks the 7th unprovoked assault on human colonies in the past year. Rustling sounds filled the chamber as representatives shifted uncomfortably. The council leader, a willowy being with translucent skin named Terran, leaned forward. Captain Park, we understand your distress. These incidents are unfortunate. The council extends its sympathies to the families of those lost. Juwu's jaw tightened. With respect, Leader Terran, we need more than sympathies. We need action. The attacking vessels were identified as belonging to the Volith mercenary fleet, the same fleet spotted near 3 other human colonies before they were attacked. That is a serious claim, said a bulky representative from the Domar Collective, his voice amplified through translation devices. The Volith operate independently. They are not under Confederation control. Yet they dock at Confederation stations, Juwu countered. They refuel using Confederation resources. We've submitted requests to block their access to these facilities 17 times. All denied. The Domar representative waved a heavy limb dismissively. Trade restrictions require consensus, Captain. Not all members agree that the evidence against the Volith is conclusive. Not conclusive. Juwu nearly shouted, then forced herself to breathe. Losing control would only reinforce their views of humans as volatile. We've provided visual recordings, weapons signatures, survivor testimonies. Perhaps, interrupted a small, floating representative from the Kithran Assembly, these incidents represent a natural response to the human presence. Your species evolved on what we classify as a death world. Your biology is built for combat and aggression. Your history is marked by constant warfare. Is it not possible that your colonies unintentionally provoke these reactions? Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Juwu felt her nails digging into her palms. Our natural predisposition toward conflict. She echoed, disbelief coloring her voice. We've followed every regulation imposed on humanity. We've occupied only the systems authorized by this council. We've maintained minimal defensive capabilities as required, which is precisely why these attacks succeed. Leader Turin raised a slender hand. Captain, please understand the complexity of the situation. Many species find humans unsettling. Your physical strength, your endurance, your tolerance for environmental extremes. These traits evolve for survival on your harsh world, but they create unease among others. So we're being punished for how we evolved. Juwu asked. Not punished, Turin corrected gently. But you must acknowledge that integration takes time. Humans have only been part of the Confederation for 3 decades. Many species took centuries to fully assimilate. Juwu looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. While we wait centuries for assimilation, our people die. The Confederation promised protection when Earth joined. We surrendered much of our military capacity as a show of good faith. A necessary precaution, the Domar representative rumbled. Your species' capacity for violence is matched only by our capacity for peace. Juwu cut in. Humans have created art, music, literature. We've developed medicines that now benefit dozens of species in this chamber. We've shared agricultural techniques that increased food production on 17 worlds. A few representatives nodded, but most remained impassive or openly skeptical. We will form a committee, Leader Turin finally announced, to investigate these claims more thoroughly. The committee will present findings at the next council session. The next session is 3 months away, Ju protested. How many more colonies will be attacked while we wait? The procedures of the Confederation cannot be rushed, Captain Turin said, his tone suggesting the discussion was over. We have existed in harmony for millennia by following proper protocols. Ju thought of the colony she'd visited last month after a similar attack. The burned buildings, the makeshift hospital overwhelmed with injured, the simple memorial garden with too many new stones, all while the Confederation debated proper protocols. Her communications device buzzed against her wrist. Ju glanced down at the message, and her blood ran cold. Urgent Proxima colony under attack. Heavy casualties. Volov ships confirmed. Military response requested immediately. Below this was a personal note from Admiral Taeyeon. They hit the school first this time. Enough is enough. Juwoo's head snapped up, eyes now blazing. The chamber had already moved on, representatives discussing trade regulations between two minor systems. Leader Tyron, she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. When the leader looked up, annoyed at the interruption, Juwoo continued, I just received word that another human colony is currently under attack. Proxima colony. The attackers specifically targeted a school. Shocked murmurs spread through the chamber. That is most disturbing, Turin admitted. We will add this incident to the committee's investigation. Children are dying right now, Juwoo said, her voice dangerously quiet. And you offer a committee. She stepped back from the platform, her decision made. For 3 decades, humans had played by Confederation rules. They had settled only on assigned worlds. They had limited their defenses. They had trusted in the system, and the system had failed them. Repeatedly. The representative from Earth wishes to inform the Council that, as of this moment, humanity withdraws its request for Confederation intervention, Juwoo announced formally. That is your right, Turin acknowledged, seeming relieved. The committee will still. No, Juwoo interrupted. You misunderstand. We're not just withdrawing our request. We're withdrawing our patience. She stood taller, addressing the entire chamber. For 30 years, we've tried to prove ourselves worthy of equal treatment. We'd followed your rules while our people suffered. That ends today. Confused looks passed between representatives. The Domar delegate leaned forward. Is that a threat, Captain Park? Juwoo's smile was cold. It's a notification. Humanity has had enough. She turned and walked from the chamber, ignoring the eruption of voices behind her. In her ear, she activated her secure channel back to Earth. Admiral Taeyeon, this is Captain Park. The Council has denied our request. Again. A pause, then the Admiral's deep voice. And your assessment. Juwoo stepped into the lift that would take her to her ship. Diplomatic options are exhausted. The Council will never see us as equals. Understood. Initiating Operation Earthrise. The Admiral's voice was grim but resolved. Return to Luna Command immediately. As the doors closed, Juwoo thought of all the human colonies spread across the galaxy. Vulnerable, but not for much longer. The Confederation had called humans Deathworlders. They had treated that term as a reason to fear and restrict humanity. They were about to learn it should have been a warning. Admiral Taeyeon, Kim stood in the curved command center of Luna Base, his face illuminated by the glow of dozens of holographic displays. Earth hung in the viewport behind him, a blue-green jewel against the blackness of space. For 3 decades, that view had reminded humans of what they were fighting to protect. Now it reminded them of what they were fighting for. Status report, Admiral Kim said, his voice calm despite the historic nature of the moment. His second-in-command, Colonel Gina, stepped forward. All ships report ready, sir. Operation Earthrise is awaiting your command. Taeyeon nodded. And our Special Forces teams. Commander Hyunwoo's team is in position near the Arcturus Communications Hub. Teams at secondary targets are also green. For years, beneath a veneer of compliance, humanity had been preparing. While officially following Confederation restrictions on military technology, Earth's scientists had developed innovations in stealth systems, quantum communications, and defensive capabilities that worked around alien regulations. Small training facilities hidden throughout the solar system had prepared special forces for operations in variable gravity and atmospheric conditions. Most importantly, humans had mapped the weaknesses in Confederation systems, the vulnerabilities the aliens never imagined anyone would exploit. Signal Commander Hyunwoo, Taehyun ordered. Operation Earthrise begins now. Across the command center, officers activated their stations. What had looked like a normal lunar base moments before revealed its true purpose, a military command hub for coordinating actions across 17 star systems. Thousands of light years away, Commander Hyunwoo and his 6-person team floated in a maintenance shaft outside the Arcturus Communications Hub. The massive station served as the central node for all Confederation communications across nearly a quarter of the galaxy. Hyunwoo checked his team's specialized gear one last time. Remember, non-lethal force whenever possible, he reminded them over their secure channel. We're here to make a point, not start a massacre. Even after what they did to our colonies, asked Minju, the team's explosives expert, especially after that. Hyunwoo replied firmly, "We prove we're better than they think we are. That's part of the mission." The signal arrived from Luna Command, and Hyunwoo gave the go-ahead. The team activated their suits' stealth systems, technology that worked on principles the Confederation had never considered, hiding them from both visual and technological detection. They moved into the station through an external service port. The first security checkpoint was manned by 2 Lithians, a species known for their keen sensory awareness. Yet they detected nothing as the human team slipped past, moving with a smoothness that came from years of training in variable gravity environments. "Control room is 3 levels up," whispered Yona, their tech specialist. "Security is heavier than expected. 8 guards, not the usual 4. Hyunwoo considered this. "They're nervous. Word of the council meeting with Captain Park must have spread. Proceed as planned, but be extra cautious." The team split into pairs, taking different routes to their target. Hyunwoo and Yona used maintenance tunnels, while the others created diversions in other parts of the station. When the station's alarm suddenly blared in a different sector, the security team in the control room tensed. 4 of the 8 guards left to investigate, exactly as planned. Hyunwoo and Yona emerged from a ventilation shaft directly into the control room. The remaining guards barely had time to turn before the humans moved. Their movements were a blur to the aliens, a demonstration of speed, and reaction time evolved on a high-gravity world with predators at every turn. Within seconds, the 4 guards were unconscious, taken down with precisely calculated blows that accounted for different alien physiologies. Security neutralized, Hyunwoo reported as Yona rushed to the main control console. Beginning Phase 2. The rest of the team arrived, securing the entrances. Minju set up small devices at key structural points, not to destroy, but to seal the room against counterattack if necessary. "I'm in," Yona announced after 60 seconds of working on the alien systems. Their security encryption was exactly where our intelligence said it would be. Beginning broadcast override. Across 17 sectors of Confederation space, communication systems suddenly activated. Emergency channels opened. Display screens in public spaces flickered. And on all of them appeared a simple image: the Earth flag, modified with stars representing human colonies. Meanwhile, at Luna Command, Admiral Taehyun watched as reports flooded in. Across the galaxy, carefully positioned human ships and operatives were taking control of key strategic locations, not with overwhelming force, but with surgical precision. A small fleet of merchant vessels, secretly equipped with advanced weapon systems, moved into position around the Volov homeworld. Human operatives on dozens of space stations activated dormant systems that gave them control of life support and security. Civilian ships transformed into military vessels, revealing hidden capabilities. Sir, Colonel Gina reported, all primary objectives secured. Minimal casualties reported. The Arcturus hub is under our complete control. Tae-yun nodded. Connect me to Commander Hyunwoo. It's time for the broadcast. On the communications hub, Hyunwoo received the transmission from Luna Command. Admiral, we're ready. Broadcasting in 30 seconds. He turned to see Confederation security forces gathering outside the sealed doors of the control room. They looked confused and frightened. They had never seen humans act like this before. For decades, humans had been polite, deferential, eager to please. Now they moved with purpose and power that the aliens had never witnessed. They're trying to cut through the doors, Minju reported. They won't make it in time, Yelena replied confidently. Broadcast ready, Commander. Hyunwoo stepped before the recording system. Send it to every Confederation world, every station, every ship. They all need to hear this. Throughout Confederation space, beings of all species stopped what they were doing as screens displayed a human in military uniform. Many had never seen a human before, except in educational materials warning about the Deathworlders. People of the Galactic Confederation. Hyunwoo began, his voice translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. For 30 years, humanity has sought peaceful coexistence. For 30 years, we have endured attacks on our colonies, restrictions on our movements, and prejudice against our very nature. His eyes were steady, his voice calm but firm. That ends today. We have taken control of key Confederation systems temporarily to deliver this message. Humanity has had enough. We gave peace every chance. Now we show you what Deathworlders can really do. He paused. We do not seek war. We do not want control of your worlds. We want only what was promised when we joined the Confederation, equal treatment and protection under galactic law. Until now, you have seen only human restraint. You mistook that restraint for weakness. That was a fatal error. Back at Luna Command, Admiral Tae-yun watched the broadcast with a sense of both satisfaction and regret. This day had been years in the planning, yet he had always hoped it wouldn't be necessary. All strike teams report success. Colonel Gina announced. Minimal resistance encountered. The Confederation never truly understood us, Tae-yun said quietly. They saw our adaptability as a threat rather than a strength. They never realized that what makes humans dangerous isn't our physical capabilities. It's our refusal to accept injustice. On his command screen, reports continued to flow in. The Volith mercenary fleet that had attacked human colonies was now surrounded by human ships. Key trading hubs were under human control. The Confederation's rapid response forces found themselves mysteriously delayed by technical issues. In just 6 hours, humanity had accomplished what the Confederation had thought impossible, taking control of information flow across 17 sectors without firing a single shot. The message was clear. Humans had been holding back. What the galaxy had seen of humanity so far was only a fraction of what they could do when pushed too far. And now, the universe would feel it. As news of Operation Earthrise spread across the galaxy, the Confederation Council fell into chaos. Emergency sessions stretched for days as representatives argued over how to respond to the human uprising. Many called for immediate military action to put the Deathworlders in their place, while others counseled caution, pointing out how effectively humans had seized control of key systems without bloodshed. Among those watching these developments with particular interest were the Vrith. Their homeworld, Vrithun, orbited a yellow star at the edge of Confederation space. Like Earth, it featured higher gravity, extreme climate variations, and a challenging ecosystem that had shaped its inhabitants into hardy, resilient beings. Admiral Knockback stood on the observation deck of the Vrith Defense Force headquarters, his scaled skin catching the light of Vrithun's setting sun. A veteran of many campaigns, Back had met humans during joint training exercises years earlier. He had recognized something familiar in their eyes, the look of those who understood survival against the odds. The latest reports, Admiral, said his aide, Lieutenant Mora, approaching with a data tablet. Back scanned the information. Human forces now controlled 17 key communication hubs and had neutralized the Volith mercenary fleet responsible for attacks on human colonies. Remarkably, they had done so with minimal casualties. They're showing restraint, Back noted. They could have killed thousands, but they didn't. The Confederation doesn't see it that way, Mora replied. They're calling it an act of war. Back made a sound between a laugh and a growl. Of course they are. The privileged always call it rebellion when the oppressed demand justice. He turned to face the chamber where the Vrith High Command had gathered. 8 military leaders and 4 civilian administrators waited for his assessment. For decades, we've watched the Confederation treat humans as second-class citizens, Back began. We recognize the pattern because we've experienced it ourselves. When we joined 3 centuries ago, we too were called partial Deathworlders. We too were feared for our strength and resilience. High Commander Taro leaned forward. Are you suggesting we support this human insurrection? The Confederation would view that as treason. I'm suggesting we recognize truth when we see it, Back replied firmly. The Confederation has forgotten its purpose. It exists to unite, not subjugate. The founding charter promised equal protection and rights to all member species. Those promises have been broken. Silence fell over the room as the leaders considered his words. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? Asked Minister Siri, the head civilian administrator. Back straightened to his full height. I propose that the Vrith stand with humanity. Not just in words, but in action. We deploy our fleet to protect human colonies from retribution. We open our communication channels to them. We show the galaxy that the problem isn't Deathworlders, it's inequality. The debate lasted hours, but in the end, the vote was decisive. The Vrith would stand with humanity. Across the galaxy, the announcement sent shockwaves through the Confederation. The Vrith Defense Force was renowned for its tactical prowess and unwavering discipline. Their support legitimized the human cause in ways the Confederation couldn't ignore. Other species began to reconsider their positions. The Melosians, aquatic beings whose underwater cities had been restricted by Confederation mining regulations, publicly questioned whether the humans were truly in the wrong. The Territ Collective, silicon-based entities whose request for colonization rights had been repeatedly denied, began quiet discussions with human representatives. What had begun as a human uprising was transforming into something larger, a movement of the overlooked and underestimated species throughout the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the neutral trading station Nexus 9, Captain Ju Park moved carefully through crowded corridors. She wore civilian clothes, her military bearing hidden beneath a slouched posture and quiet demeanor. The station buzzed with rumors about Earth's rebellion, making it both the perfect place to hide and the most dangerous place to be recognized. She reached a nondescript door in the science sector and pressed her hand against the scanner. After a moment, the door slid open. Inside, Dr. Neri waited nervously. A Confederation xenobiologist of the Pellerin species, Neri resembled a tall, slender human with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her emotions. Currently, she displayed anxious purples and blues. Captain Park, Neri said quietly, I wasn't sure you would come. Your message said it was urgent, Chu replied, and that you had information that could help humanity's cause. Neri gestured to a workstation where data screens displayed complex biological models. For 15 years, I've been studying evolutionary patterns across species. My particular focus has been on adaptive capabilities, how different species respond to environmental challenges. She called up a series of images showing human DNA alongside other species. Humans are remarkable, Neri continued, not just for your physical adaptations, but for your cognitive and social ones. You develop solutions to problems faster than any species we've documented. You form cooperative groups across genetic lines. You share innovations freely. Chu frowned. This doesn't sound like classified information. These are things humans have been saying about ourselves for years. Exactly. Nari's skin flashed a determined gold. But what you don't know is that my research proved these traits make humans ideal stabilizing agents in diverse ecological and social systems. 5 years ago, I presented my findings to the Confederation Council's Science Committee. She pulled up an official document. They classified my research immediately. They ordered me to halt all studies related to human adaptive capabilities. When I asked why, I was told that such information might disrupt the established hierarchy of species relations. Jumu felt her breath catch. They suppressed your research because it showed humans in a positive light. It's worse than that, Neri said. My research showed that incorporating humans into diverse communities actually increased stability and innovation rates. The evidence suggested that the Confederation would benefit tremendously from giving humans more influence, not less. She brought up more documents, internal memos, meeting minutes, research directives. The Council didn't just ignore this data, Nari continued. They actively worked to counter it. They funded studies designed to emphasize human aggression while downplaying your cooperative traits. They created educational materials that portrayed Earth as a chaotic death world rather than a cradle of diverse and successful adaptations. Juwu stared at the evidence, anger building inside her. Why are you showing me this now? Why didn't you come forward before? Nari's skin darkened with shame. Fear. Career preservation. The rationalizations we all use to justify inaction in the face of injustice. She straightened her shoulders. But I cannot remain silent any longer. Not after seeing peaceful colonies attacked. Not after watching the Council dismiss your pleas for help. What do you want from me? Juwu asked carefully. I want to make this information public, Neri replied. And I'm not alone. There are dozens of scientists across species who have reached similar conclusions but were silenced. We've been communicating in secret, compiling our findings. She handed Juwu a data crystal. Everything is here. The research, the evidence of suppression, the names of those willing to speak truth. We believe in the original vision of the Confederation. Unity through diversity, strength through difference. What's happening now is a perversion of that vision. Juwu accepted the crystal, understanding its true value. This wasn't just evidence of scientific suppression. It was proof that the Confederation's treatment of humans had been deliberately engineered despite evidence that such treatment harmed the galaxy as a whole. Transmitting this through normal channels would be intercepted, Juwu said thoughtfully. But now that we control the major communication hubs. Exactly. Nari's skin brightened with hope. The truth can finally be heard. As Juwu left the station, the data crystal secure in her pocket, she received word that 3 more species had declared support for humanity's cause. What had begun as Earth standing alone was becoming a coalition of the overlooked and underestimated. The Confederation had feared human adaptability. Now they would witness it, not in warfare, but in the building of alliances, the sharing of truth, and the creation of a movement that would reshape the galaxy. The Cygnus Trade Corridor had always been a marvel of the galaxy. 7 star systems arranged in a rough line, each hosting habitable worlds and thriving space stations. For centuries, it had served as the Confederation's most vital trade route, connecting hundreds of worlds through a natural pathway of stable space. Now it would become a battlefield. Admiral Taehyun Kim stood on the bridge of the ESV Horizon, Earth's largest battleship. Around him, officers monitored systems and relayed information in the calm, efficient manner that had become the hallmark of human forces. Confederation fleet has arrived at Cygnus Alpha, reported his tactical officer. 83 warships, including 15 dreadnoughts. They're deploying in standard Confederation battle formation. Kim nodded, unsurprised. The Confederation military relied heavily on overwhelming force and predictable time-tested formations. They had used the same basic tactics for over 300 years, because they had never needed to innovate. And our allies? He asked. The Vrith battle group has taken position at Cygnus Gamma as planned. Melosian and Terrate support ships are in place. Captain Park's strike force is moving into the nebula now. Kim looked at the tactical display showing the 7 star systems of the Cygnus Corridor. The Confederation forces had positioned themselves exactly where he had predicted, at the head of the corridor, planning to push through with overwhelming force. "They expect us to meet them head-on," Kim said softly, "to match strength against strength, because that's what they would do." His communication officer turned. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Confederation flagship. They're demanding our immediate surrender." "Put it through," Kim ordered. The view screen activated, showing the stern face of High Commander Vrax, the most decorated military leader in the Confederation. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of irritation in his species. "Admiral Kim," Vrax began, "your rebellion has gone far enough. You faced the full might of the Confederation fleet. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly." Kim allowed himself a small smile. "Like our colonies were treated fairly when they were attacked. Like our grievances were treated fairly when we brought them to the Council." "Those were unfortunate incidents," Vrax replied stiffly. "But your response, seizing communication hubs, blockading worlds, forming alliances with other species, these are acts of war." "No, Commander," Kim said calmly. "These are acts of necessity. We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We were ignored." Vrax's eyes blinked faster. "You cannot hope to defeat us. The Confederation has existed for 10,000 years. Your species has barely left its home planet. Perhaps that's why we see possibilities that you don't," Kim replied. "This is your final chance, Commander. Acknowledge the equal status of all species within the Confederation and the restrictions on Deathworlders, and create a true system of justice that protects all worlds equally." "Impossible," Vrax snapped. "Surrender or be destroyed." The transmission ended. Kim turned to his officers. "They've made their choice. Signal all ships. Execute Operation 7 Stars." Across the Cygnus Corridor, human ships began moving in patterns that confused Confederation sensors. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, they dispersed into smaller groups, each moving with different speeds and trajectories. In the Confederation flagship, High Commander Vrax watched with growing unease. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Where is their main force?" His tactical officer looked confused. "They appear to be dividing their forces, Commander. But that makes no tactical sense. They're weakening themselves." Vrax studied the display. "A trick. They must have some hidden advantage." He raised his voice. "All ships, advance at full speed. Crush their scattered forces before they can regroup." The mighty Confederation fleet surged forward into the Cygnus Corridor, weapons charged and shields at maximum. But as they passed Cygnus Beta, something unexpected happened. Small groups of human ships executed a maneuver unlike anything in Confederation military doctrine. They turned sharply while accelerating, creating attack vectors that Confederation tracking systems couldn't predict. "They're using gravitational fields to enhance their turns," gasped a Confederation science officer. "That's not possible." Yet the humans were doing it. Their ships danced through space in ways that defied conventional tactics, striking quickly at exposed points in the Confederation formation before withdrawing. "Ancient Earth naval tactics," Admiral Kim explained to his officers as they watched the battle unfold. Specifically, the maneuvers of Admiral Yi Sun-sin, who defeated larger Japanese fleets with creative use of tides and narrow straits. "We've adapted his approaches to space warfare." When the Confederation fleet adjusted to counter these attacks, the human forces switched tactics entirely. Now they moved in tight formations that reminded some observers of ancient Earth cavalry charges, concentrating overwhelming force at a single point before the enemy could respond. "Genghis Khan," Kim commented. "His Mongol horsemen could defeat larger armies through mobility and concentrated attacks." The Confederation commanders, trained to follow established protocols, struggled to adapt to these constantly changing tactics. Just when they thought they understood the human approach, it would transform again. Meanwhile, deep within the Cygnus Nebula, Captain Ju Park, led a small strike force of 5 ships. The nebula was considered impassable. Its intense radiation and unpredictable gravitational eddies had claimed many ships that attempted to navigate it. But humans from Earth were used to navigating treacherous environments. The strike force moved carefully through the swirling clouds of gas and dust, following a path that Juwoo's team had mapped through months of careful study. "Radiation levels increasing," reported her navigation officer. "Shield effectiveness dropping to 60%. "Maintain course," Juwoo ordered calmly. "We've trained for worse." The small fleet pushed deeper into the nebula, their ships' hulls groaning under the strain. Confederation sensors had lost them completely. To all observers, it appeared they had been destroyed attempting the suicidal route. On the main battlefield, the Confederation forces were growing desperate. Despite their superior numbers, they couldn't land decisive blows against the elusive human ships. Worse, the Vrith battle group had now engaged from Cygnus Gamma, attacking the Confederation's flank with precision strikes. "We need to withdraw and regroup," urged Vrax's second-in-command. "Their tactics are too unpredictable." "No," Vrax shouted. "We cannot show weakness against Deathworlders. Press the attack. Commit our reserves." The Confederation poured more ships into the battle, focusing all their attention on the forces they could see. Which is why no one noticed when 5 human ships emerged from the supposedly impassable nebula, directly behind the Confederation command ships. "We're in position," Juwoo reported to Admiral Kim. "Their rear is completely exposed." "Excellent work, Captain," Kim replied. "Proceed with the final phase." Juwoo's strike force targeted the Confederation flagship's communication array with surgical precision, not to destroy the ship, but to disable its ability to coordinate the fleet. Confusion spread through the Confederation forces as commands stopped flowing from their leaders. Some ships continued fighting, others hesitated, and the carefully coordinated Confederation battle plan fell apart. Juwoo opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the Cygnus corridor, Confederation, human, and allied alike. "This is Captain Juwoo Park of the Earth space vessel Defiance," she announced. "The battle is over. Look around you. Look at what we've accomplished with inferior numbers but superior tactics. We could destroy your command ships right now, but that's not why we're here." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We don't want your galaxy. We just want our place in it. Equal, respected, free." On the Confederation flagship, High Commander Vrax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Somehow, these humans had outmaneuvered the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. They had navigated an impassable nebula. They had coordinated with other species in ways the Confederation had always feared, but never thought possible. "They're not firing," his tactical officer noted with surprise. "Their weapons are locked on us, but they're not firing." Vrax understood the message in that restraint. The humans could have pressed their advantage, could have crippled the Confederation fleet. Instead, they were offering another chance for peace. He opened a channel to Admiral Kim. "Perhaps," Vrax said slowly, "it is time we talked about the future of the galaxy. All of us together." The Battle of 7 Stars would be remembered not for its destruction, but for what it created, a moment when the old order recognized that change was not just inevitable, but necessary. And as ships from both sides powered down their weapons, the stars of the Cygnus corridor witnessed the beginning of a new understanding in the galaxy. The terraformed moon of Harmony circled the massive gas giant like a faithful companion. Its artificial atmosphere glowed with a soft blue tint as the distant sun rose over its carefully crafted landscape. The moon had been designed specifically for this historic gathering, a neutral ground where no single species held advantage. The Great Hall stood at the center of Unity City, a magnificent structure built by architects from 17 different worlds. Its walls incorporated materials from hundreds of planets, and its design accommodated beings of all sizes, atmospheres, and gravitational needs. Today, it would witness the birth of a new era. Juwoo Park adjusted the formal diplomatic uniform that had replaced her military attire. After the Battle of Seven Stars, she had surprised many by requesting a transfer from military command to diplomatic service. "I've seen enough of war," she had told Admiral Kim. "Now I want to build something lasting." As humanity's lead diplomat, she had spent the past year shuttling between worlds, listening to grievances, sharing ideas, and helping craft the framework for what would become the Galactic Alliance. The work had been exhausting but deeply fulfilling. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Neri, who now served as a scientific advisor to the Transition Council. Her skin shimmered with excited blues and greens. "A little," Ju admitted. "A year ago, we were fighting for our survival. Now we're helping rewrite the rules for galactic civilization. You've earned this moment," Neri said warmly. "Your restraint at Cygnus changed everything. When people expected destruction, you offered dialogue." The Great Hall was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Some floated in specialized atmospheric bubbles. Others moved on mechanical assistance platforms. Many walked on legs or leg-like appendages, while some flowed like liquid or hovered above the ground. The diversity was breathtaking. Near the center of the room, former High Commander Vrax stood in conversation with Admiral Back of the Vrith. The two military leaders had developed an unexpected respect for each other during the transition negotiations. "I still don't understand why they didn't destroy our ships when they had the chance," Vrax was saying. "It defies military logic." Back made a sound that served as the Vrith equivalent of a chuckle. "That's because you're thinking like a Confederation tactician. Humans don't just fight to win battles. They fight to win peace." Across the hall, Admiral Tadion Kim was speaking with representatives from formerly marginalized species. The Melosians, with their flowing aquatic forms, and the crystalline terrates had become strong allies of humanity. Together with the Vrith and several other species, they had formed the core of what some call the Deathworld Coalition. "The term no longer feels like an insult," commented a Melosian diplomat, water rippling across their transparent body. "Rather, it recognizes our shared experience of evolving in challenging environments." "Evolution shapes us all differently," Kim replied. "The mistake was in judging some adaptations as superior to others." A soft chime sounded, calling the assembly to order. Thousands of beings took their places in the circular chamber. At the center stood a simple table bearing the treaty that would dissolve the Galactic Confederation and establish the Galactic Alliance in its place. The Elder of Proceedings, a venerable being from one of the galaxy's oldest species, raised their four arms for silence. "We gather today to acknowledge the end of one era and the beginning of another," the Elder began, their voice translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. "For 10,000 years, the Confederation united many worlds. But as with all things, evolution demands change." The Elder gestured to the treaty. "This document represents a year of dialogue, compromise, and hope. It establishes a new foundation for our shared future, one that explicitly values the contributions of all sapient species, regardless of their evolutionary origin." Representatives from 12 species approached the table. They had been chosen to be the first signatories, a mix of former Confederation leaders and previously marginalized species. Ju Park, representing Earth and humanity, was among them. As she waited her turn, Ju reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The attacked colonies, the dismissive council meetings, the desperate gamble of Operation Earthrise, the tense battle at Cygnus, and finally, the long, difficult work of turning conflict into cooperation. When she stepped forward to sign, Ju felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Her signature would not just represent Earth, but a new understanding of what strength truly meant in a diverse galaxy. After all representatives had signed, Ju was invited to address the assembly. She had prepared carefully for this moment, knowing her words would be remembered for generations. "Distinguished representatives," she began, looking out at the gathered beings. "1 year ago, humanity stood at a crossroads. We had suffered attacks on our colonies, discrimination against our people, and dismissal of our concerns. We could have chosen the path of vengeance. Instead, we chose the harder path, fighting not to destroy, but to create something better. She gestured to the diverse gathering before her. Look around this chamber. We come from worlds as different as can be imagined. Some of us evolved in crushing gravity, others in the near weightlessness of oceanic depths. Some breathe oxygen, others methane or hydrogen. Some experience time as we do, others perceive it differently. Yet here we stand, united not despite our differences, but because of them. Ju paused, making eye contact with as many different species as she could. The old Confederation feared difference. It created hierarchies based on arbitrary standards. It labeled some worlds as Deathworlders and treated their inhabitants as dangerous. But our strength comes not from similarity, but from difference. Humans didn't fight because we enjoy conflict. We fought because sometimes peace requires standing up for what's right. She touched the treaty document gently. Section 3 of this charter explicitly recognizes the value of evolutionary diversity. It acknowledges that adaptations we once feared, physical strength, environmental resilience, unique cognitive patterns, are assets to our shared civilization. It ensures that no species will again be marginalized based on their evolutionary origins. Around the hall, representatives nodded in agreement. Even former Confederation hardliners like Vrax seemed moved by her words. But a document is just the beginning, Ju continued. The real work lies ahead, in building trust, in challenging old prejudices, in seeing possibilities where once we saw only threats. She smiled, thinking of Earth and its long, complicated history. Humans have a saying. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Today, we have bent that arc a little further, not through overwhelming force, but through courage, persistence, and the willingness to see potential in each other. As Ju concluded her speech, the great hall erupted in the various sounds of approval from hundreds of species. Applause, humming, light flashes, pheromone releases, and gestures unique to each evolutionary path. Later, as representatives mingled in the celebration that followed, Admiral Kim found Ju on a balcony overlooking the city. "Quite a speech," he said, joining her at the railing. "You've become quite the diplomat." Ju smiled. "I had a good teacher. Conflict taught me the value of peace." "Do you think it will last?" Kim asked, looking up at the gas giant that dominated the sky. "This new alliance." "Nothing lasts forever," Ju replied thoughtfully. "But I believe we've built something with stronger foundations. The old Confederation was based on fear and control. The alliance is based on respect and cooperation." Below them, representatives from dozens of worlds walked the pathways of Unity City. Former enemies engaged in conversation. Species that had once been segregated now shared ideas freely. "The universe felt humanity's strength," Ju said softly. "But now it will benefit from humanity's other gifts, our resilience, our innovation, our hope." Kim nodded. "And our capacity to see possibility where others see only threat." As night fell on Harmony, the new Galactic Alliance celebrated its first day. Throughout the galaxy, beings of all kinds received news of the historic treaty. On human colonies that had once lived in fear, people gathered in public squares to watch the broadcast from the Great Hall. The road ahead would not be easy. 10,000 years of hierarchy and prejudice would not disappear overnight. There would be resistance, setbacks, and new challenges no one could predict. But as Ju looked out at the stars that night, she felt something she hadn't experienced since before the first colony attacks: genuine hope for the future. Humans had found their place in the galaxy, not by conquering it, but by helping to reimagine it. The Deathworlders had stood up for themselves, and, in doing so, had created something better for everyone.